Hey, we got the Harris Wall sticker. Welcome up.
Real quick, I just want to say that I heavily agree with what you said about neutrality in the classroom. I think that's a brilliant standpoint, and as an ed major, I agree with that. Before I get to like the nitty gritty, go dogs, horns down. Anybody? Yeah.
We can agree. We should just stop. We agreed way too much. You're creeping me out, man.
My bad. So I'm going to talk about some gun control stuff. Do you mind if I give you some statistics first?
Yeah, fine.
All right, awesome. So in the United Kingdom, there was the Dunblane Massacre in March 13, 1996. It was a school shooting. 17 people were killed. 15 were injured. Following that massacre, it is probably the biggest massacre in UK history, involving schools specifically. There was a ban on all handguns. Since then, there's been no school shootings in the UK, and it averages 28 firearm homicides a year. In the United States, there are 39,707 gun deaths in 2019 alone. The average of one gun-related death every 11 minutes. In 2023, there were 346 school shooting incidents in the U.S. So far, there have been 385 mass shootings in 2024, and a mass shooting is defined as an incident in which 4 or more people are injured or killed. Why are you pro-Second Amendment, and can you give me your stance on that?
Great. So I just want to make sure I can know where you're coming from. Do you believe owning a firearm is a right or a privilege?
I believe it's a privilege. I'm going to go with that.
Okay, so then you do not believe in the Second Amendment as it is written?
No, I believe it needs to be amended. I believe in a ban for guns.
Okay, so that's where we disagree, and that's okay. We have clarity but not agreement. I believe that the right to protect yourself and your family against a tyrannical government or a home invader is an inalienable right that must be protected and that no one can take it away. Now, and that's okay, we have clarity on that. Now, let's go through why I believe that and some clarifying statistics. Yeah. Everything you said is true, but one part of it is misleading. Is that, yes, there are about 30,000 gun deaths a year, or death by firearm, but 2/3 of them are death by suicide.
Yes.
Right? So it's a little misleading to say 30,000 or even every 11 minutes. And so there's some people that say, well, it's easier to commit suicide if you have a gun in the house. You and I would both agree, though, that if someone is committing suicide with a firearm, there's other underlying issues. The firearm is secondary.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's a reason. Thank you for agreeing with that.
Yes.
Okay, so therefore, that gives you about 10,000 gun deaths a year. The vast majority of those are gang-related in about 10 cities across the country. Not excusing it, but there's other underlying factors associated with it. Now, let's get into what our position is, those of us that believe in the Second Amendment. We fully acknowledge that when you have liberty, that you're going to have sometimes undesirable outcomes. For example, there are 50,000 people a year that die in auto fatalities, and it's tragic. However, no reasonable person would come up to the mic and say, let's ban driving.
True. The one thing I disagree with, though, is that the primary intention of a firearm is to kill something.
Well, not necessarily. That's interesting. The primary intention of a firearm is actually to protect what you love. The primary intention...
I disagree with that, but...
That's okay. So let's actually... The firearm is a technology or a tool that is actually intention neutral. Right? So a firearm could be used for sharpshooting, or it could be used for a massacre. No different than a kitchen knife can be used for cook a beautiful meal, or to murder somebody. So it's a piece of technology, albeit it makes killing easier, but it in itself is not inherently what you might think it is. Now let me just finish the point, though, is that we as enthusiasts for the Second Amendment acknowledge that in a free society, people are going to do bad things and dumb things, but there is a price to liberty. And this is a mature viewpoint that we lost during COVID. During COVID, as a country, we said, we don't want liberty, we want safety, and everybody stay at home 15 days to slow the spread. And how many of you guys wanted the lockdowns to end after like 2 weeks, right? And so what we get at, though, with firearms is that we acknowledge that there will be unnecessary deaths. We acknowledge that we want to try to limit those. We could talk about that. Yeah. But in a culture that believes that owning a firearm is a right, not a privilege, our goal should be about limiting the suffering, but acknowledging that you're not going to get rid of it completely. It's a different viewpoint than the European model. The final point I'll say is, why do you think we believe it's a right? It's because we believe that, God forbid, if the government ever becomes tyrannical, we need an ability to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government. So please, your thoughts on this.
Yes, absolutely. So there's two things I want to touch on. The first is being the context of the Second Amendment during its creation. Obviously, the Constitution was written in 1776.
It was 1787, and the Bill of Rights was 1791, but that's okay. Yeah.
Anyways, so back then, the average... an experienced shooter on a musket could fire 3 shots a minute. All right, on average, it took 30 seconds to fire 1 shot. Modern day AR-15s, traditionally, if it's a stock model, holds about 30 rounds in a magazine. Now, you can customize that and make it carry more, sure, but the staggering statistic is that these AR-15s can empty this 30-round magazine in 5 seconds, is the possibility.
So that's totally correct. The question is, what was the founders' intent when they put the Second Amendment? For example,
yes.
to play out, and I'm not trying to pick on you,
no,
but for example, you say the founders only want or thought that, okay, musket, Second Amendment. Did they only think First Amendment, parchment and paper, not Twitter?